As I drove past the forests, it was clear the vibrant colors of the oaks and maples had already fallen to the ground. Only the tamarack still had the occasional glimmer of gold. It was late fall in New Brunswick, Canada, as I headed for my last campout of the season. I'd chosen a national park in the northeast coast of the province that hugged the Gulf of St. Lawrence.
Parking lot camping. Something new to me. It's so good to be back into the camper. I've been spending so much time lately on the cabin. The camper's been neglected. Poor little guy, and I haven't spent a lot of time even doing little things to it, like my usual fix-ups. But I did do one a couple of months ago, and I'm going to tell you about it now. And that is this table here. Now it looks like the old table, but it's not. It's the new and improved. And I'll show you why it's new and improved. Now I did keep the original post, but I had to modify the cap that holds it in place because the original was too big. And what I came up with was I just used the lid of a jar of Knorr vegetable broth, just fit in perfectly. And so that's what holds it in place. But to take it off, I just go up like that, remove the pole, and in the back here, you can see there is a strip. It's a strip of wood, and it's got a piano hinge underneath. So all I have to do is turn it down like that, lift up, and out it comes. The hardware to attach it to the wall is this little guy here, which is a latch receiver. What I had bought is a 90-degree latch bar with receiver, and it typically goes like this. I just don't use this part, and all I have to do is line up these straight brackets with the latch receiver like this. I flip the wood underneath. Anyway, this comes down, goes right there. Now, cushions. Remember I had the red polka dot cushions? Don't have them anymore. I got new ones. Now I got two, and they just go right like this. I had these, got these made online by a place called Covers and All. They're in the US. And all you have to do is give them the dimensions, and they'll make a weatherproof cover. And yeah, I got sort of boring beige. Works for me. You can get something nicer. And I was surprised. Not only were they inexpensive, but I got them to Canada in just over a week. So they're really fast delivery. Look at that. Fits perfect. Now, I have a bed. I have two beds now, so now it's a little bit more versatile. If I want to use the other side to bring up the table, I have a lot of room if I want to entertain people, or if I want to have somebody else, now I have two beds. Before, I only had one. Not as versatile. I think this is going to work good. You know, this isn't bad at all. I'm in a national park, but I'm camped in a parking lot. Why? Because all the campsites in the park are closed down for the season. It's November, but they were kind enough to let me camp in the parking lot. Not free, of course, but at a discount, and I appreciate that. It is, and I'll probably mispronounce it, so I'll try it 3 times. I am in Kouchibouguac National Park in northeast New Brunswick. It's a beautiful little park by the ocean. It's right across from PEI, and there's also a ton of trails and forest, marshes, a bog. It is picturesque.
Early the next morning, I left my parking lot hangout for my first trail.
The first hike of the day is the bog, and I am here.
My parking lot was at La Source, and the bog was only a short walk down the road. Now, doesn't everybody love the sound of crunching leaves under their feet? There is still lots of color. It was just a little more subtle and delicate. Autumn is the season of the mushroom, as these shaggy manes emerge from the ground. The stinkhorns add an earthy fragrance to the forest. While most fungi need sunlight to sprout, these toadstools climb high in an effort to meet it halfway. After a short distance through the forest, a clearing appears with an observation platform. The surrounding trees have given way to this vast expanse of spongy wetland known as the Northern Bog. This frosty boardwalk is a much better alternative to being knee-high in peat moss.
Even when it's a little cold, it's still beautiful.
While most of the water rippled with the wind, a sheltered shore was textured by a thin cover of ice. Although starting to wilt from the first frost, the Labrador tea still clings to its stems. The reindeer moss, however, remains unscathed. The tamarack needles are now in their golden years, but will soon depart and litter the ground. Any trip to the bog would not be complete without a glimpse of its most notorious inhabitants, the flesh-eating pitcher plants. These fiends of the flora are carnivorous, luring unsuspecting prey with sweet nectar. A journey deep inside these pitcher-shaped caverns is one of no return. It's a trap, and the downward-pointing spikes seal the fate of the unlucky until they are slowly digested.
So I just have to know, what happens when you stick your finger in a carnivorous plant?
Well, fortunately, I still had 9 more fingers. It was just a small sacrifice for science. But it was time to head back to camp.
A few notes The last video I did, I asked questions to my viewers. And the first one was because the U.S. border is going to open again, the land border, I plan on going south. I haven't been in south for over 2 years now, and I needed a little advice because I just haven't done the East Coast before. A lot of great tips from my viewers, how to avoid the toll charges, gridlock, places not to go and places to go. Great tips. Thank you. I appreciate that. And the other question I asked was advice on a propane heater. Now, everybody should know at this point that I've done a lot of experiment with heating. I've used the onboard propane stove, which I'm not really, a propane furnace, which I don't really like. The wood stove. I've used a diesel heater. Of course, I use my Arctic sleeping bag, and I use an electric blanket. So I think I've done the gamut of various choices. And I did get a lot of suggestions. And the two that most people said, like the top two, were the Dickinson P9000 and the Propex HX2000. Now, I looked into both of these. They're both very expensive, which I have to take in consideration because I am on a budget. I'm not going to spend a lot of money, especially at over $1,000 in at least one of these cases, for something I'm only going to use maybe a quarter of the year. So I looked into these, and they do seem efficient. That's the good news. They do seem reasonably quiet. And the Dickinson P9000, I believe you can regulate the flow of propane, so you can have it just low, which is what I want because I don't want it to be 70 degrees or 20 degrees Celsius all the time. I want it to just be above freezing. That's fine with me. The problem with the Dickinson is it has to vent out, and it has to vent out vertically. And that means I'd have to put a hole in my roof. I really don't want to do that. For those not familiar, this is my onboard propane furnace, the one that came with my camper when I first got it. And if I was to replace it, it would have to be going in the same spot. So that kind of limits my choices. There's just not enough places available in this camper because it's so small and I've got everything the way I like it. This is really it. Now, what's the problem with this propane furnace in the first place? First of all, current draw. It uses far too much. Secondly, it cycles on and off and on and off. However long you have it and you're using it, if it gets colder, it just keeps cycling. But the worst thing is when it's quiet, maybe you're in the middle of the night, you're asleep, and it decides to turn itself on. This is what it sounds like. Not exactly a lullaby. As far as the Propex HS2000 goes, well, there's one thing I'm not crazy about, well, including the price, is that it only has one speed. It's either on or off. It's regulated by a thermostat, and that's the ones that I'm really trying to avoid, you know, on, off. They didn't seem to have any way of controlling the amount of propane. And apparently you have to have 2 holes in the floor, which again, I mean, my trailer's starting to look like Swiss cheese. I just don't want any more holes in it. It may fit in the spot, but I'm going to look for a third option. So if anybody has any other ideas besides the Dickinson or the Propex, please let me know.
Now this little guy had an idea, but since he couldn't talk, he gave it to me in Morse code. T-R-U-M-A. What does it mean?
Other than that, I think I'm going to enjoy my hike. The weather seems good. It's supposed to get a little bit sunnier, probably a little bit windier, so I'm sure I'm going to have some variety.
After my bog visit, I drove past the South Kouchibouguac campground to the parking lot at Kelly's Beach. Although there were no other cars, the wildlife all seemed to be in a hurry to get somewhere. Even the waves seemed in a little bit of a rush. On the sands were the footprints of the now invisible. Kelly's Beach has a boardwalk that leads to the sand dunes, but right now it's home to these feathered fishermen. Great blue herons are like the sloths of the bird world, slow-moving, patient, and laid back. In summer, Kelly's is the warmest beach in the Maritimes. But in November, it's taken back by birds and rainbows. The dunes are a strip of barrier islands covered with golden sands and marram grass. The perfect habitat for both the shore plants and animals. Like this one named Dusty Miller. Once settled on the beach, these seagulls form a close-knit society. But when their tummies rumble, they set off in search of food. And when the conditions are just right, they turn into kamikaze pilots, diving into the sea at the mere flicker of a fish scale. The windy waves of the open sea have a certain calming effect to those who watch. But the shallow waters of the sheltered lagoon form patterns that truly hypnotize. I left Kelly's Beach and made a longer drive to the other side of the Kouchibouguac River. It was a trail called Osprey, and it was a nice quiet walk that took me out to the Black River Point. And the last thing that I asked about was, does anybody have any ideas for recipes? I travel on the road. I'm usually limited to small towns and gas stations for getting my food and whatever I have on board for cooking it. Not a lot of space, and I got a phenomenal response from my viewers. I got over 50 recipes, and they're all over the place. They're things I've never even thought of. So I'm going to start trying some of those recipes, and I think I'm going to start with this trip. So the meal of the night is provided by the suggestion of Hermit Girl Wanders, who said the ingredients are mushrooms sautéed, sour cream, garlic and onion powder, mushroom soup over bowl of wide noodles. Add peas and glazed carrots if you wish. That's her recipe, and this is what I've got. I have cremini mushrooms, I have extra broad egg noodles, sour cream, onion powder, garlic powder, good old Campbell's cream of mushroom soup, and to top it all off, a little cilantro. That's my own idea. Sautéing mushrooms is pretty easy. Just slice them up and add to the cast iron pan over medium heat. At the same time, boil the pasta, occasionally stirring so it doesn't stick. When the mushrooms are almost ready, sprinkle in the garlic powder and then the onion powder. For the sauce, I use an aluminum baking tray so I don't have to wash dishes. A little sour cream and the cream of mushroom soup, plus a little water until it's the right consistency. Mix it all together under very low heat for just a couple of minutes. Once it's all cooked, you just put it all together and make it pretty. And here it is. It looks absolutely gorgeous. Hermit Girl Wanders. Now, how does it taste? Oh, I love pasta dishes anyway. But with sautéed mushrooms, this is awesome. Thanks, Hermit Girl. This little squirrel was telling me my welcome was over, so I packed up my trailer and prepared to head off. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Check out my other ones as well. Till next time, enjoy your travels.